Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of I Never Knew or Ink by Life Coach Maureen. I am Maureen Scanlon, your hostess, hopefully with the mostest. And I am a certified life coach, an empowerment coach, a relationship expert, a award-winning author, podcast host, obviously, and a professional speaker. And I'm now going to add entrepreneur because I'm starting a new business, or by the time this airs, it will have been in full force. So I'm so excited for another wonderful episode, another wonderful guest. We were talking offline before we started, and it's so cool to me every time I start talking with a guest and it's like, oh, me too. Oh, I'm having the, oh yeah, this is why you're here. Okay. So the alignments never ever cease to amaze me. My next guest, she's so beautiful and fabulous, and we've decided we're going to do a little Airbnb and switch homes. So I want everyone to welcome my beautiful, beautiful guest, Amy. And Amy works with women who carry the highly sensitive trait, and she helps people with reconnecting to their body's innate intelligence using Mother Nature as a guide. She finds that when we awaken to our inner light and wisdom, we can sync the mind and the body and spirit. Amy combines the power of the plants along with energy medicine techniques and breath work to allow women to live in harmony in their bodies and environments. Thank you for being here and welcome, my beautiful guest, Amy.
Thanks, Maureen. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I can't wait for us to trade houses.
I know. So I, of course, love the mental health arena, but I also know you cannot have just the mental part of it. You have to have the physical part. And that's why I'm so excited that you're here today. So as this podcast is I Never Knew, tell us your story of how this awareness started, this journey for you that brought you to where you know our mind and body is aligned.
Yeah, so for most people, I was living in my mind my entire life. I grew up as a child having all these physical symptoms, but I didn't understand them. And the message that I was told was, you're too sensitive. This isn't real. You're just hyper aware. You have too much anxiety and you're causing these symptoms to manifest, right? Like basically you're making it up. It's not real. And it was a really hard message to get as a child from, about age 5. I remember having this message about, it was stop complaining. I'll give you something to complain about, right? You're too sensitive. This is why you have issues. You need to stop feeling all these things. You need to stop worrying so much. But I couldn't stop it. It was, now I know it was the way I'm designed, right? And so I would feel things so much. I would have all these sensations that were physically manifesting in my body, reactions to my environment, reactions to people in my environment, reactions to events that were happening. And so it got to the point where it kept escalating, where in high school, I was throwing up every morning before school because the anxiety was so bad. I didn't want to go to school. I was physically vomiting. I had severe migraines. I was blacking out in class. I would go down to the nurse's office and she would say, oh, you just don't want to sit in math. I'm like, no, I'm literally blacking out. I can't tell you even what happened. I'm vomiting every morning. There's something wrong. And I would go to my doctor and she would run the test. But as we all know, that when you go to your general practitioner, your primary doctor, they're just going to run, the standard test. They're not going to run full panels. They're not going to look for the root cause. They're going to treat the symptoms. And so that's what happened. They just, treated the symptoms. Here's an antidepressant. Here's an anti-anxiety medication. Here's a migraine medication. The issue is that I was that 1% that had severe reactions to all these medications. So I didn't want to take the medications. And I was instructed that this was going to help me, but it wasn't helping me. If anything, it was causing more symptoms, which again would cause more stress to my body, would cause more anxiety, would cause me to feel really not seen, heard, or believed. And so these symptoms kept escalating throughout my life. And I developed protectors in order to deal with what was happening, right? So when our needs are not met as children, the body forms protectors so that you are kept safe, because that's the whole idea, to keep you safe so that you keep living. So I became a control freak. I became a people pleaser. I became the comic. If I was making people laugh, they couldn't make fun of me. If everyone liked me, they couldn't find any fault with me, right? If I could fit in, I wouldn't be labeled as different. So it set up this really unhealthy story that I believed ever since I was a kid. And so when I got to college and after college, and I was working in the world, I was working with chronic pain patients, and I began to resemble my patients. And I was doing medical research, and I was, I was geriatric patients, and I was in my mid-20s. And I thought, how can I be resembling these 60 and 70-year-olds? I'm in my mid-20s. I'm thinking I'm eating well. I practice yoga multiple times a week. I move my body, I do all these things. But again, I was still stuck in that mind mentality. There was a disconnect from my neck down. It was numb. I couldn't feel that body. So my body would send me some messages, right? That were symptoms of pain, of blacking out, of throwing up, to get my attention. But I was taught, like we're all taught, the body is broken. The messages, the symptoms are wrong. The body is broken. Take this pill and you'll get better. But that never worked for me. But that was the same messaging I always received. So the doctors would just say, you're stressed out, take this pill. Oh, you're too sensitive, take this pill. So this idea was commonly told to me throughout my whole life. And I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand how I could do things differently. I had done all the things. I'd become a perfectionist. I would become a people pleaser. I was trying to control as much as I could, and my body was breaking down at a very fast rate. And so it got to the point where I could no longer work because my body was not letting me get out of bed. I then got severe vertigo. I had daily migraines. I could not function. I could not leave the bathroom. The GI symptoms were so bad. I could not drive. And my job entailed driving to clinics around where I live and seeing patients. So I could not do that. I could not look at the computer. I could not get out of bed. I could not sleep. I was in severe pain and nobody had any answers. So the sad statistic is that with autoimmune is that it takes on average 10 years and 20 doctors to get a diagnosis. So I was already in my mid-20s and still had no diagnoses. And I had been having these symptoms since age 5. And so I was on this merry-go-round of seeing all the top specialists in New York. Again, I don't live in an area where there's not healthcare. We're inundated with healthcare in New York, and nobody could figure out what it was. They were running the blood work, but again, it was just standard panels, and it wasn't showing a complete picture. So they didn't know what to do with me because I was this enigma that wasn't falling into the boxes the way that they thought, because I had so many symptoms and they seemed unrelated. And I wasn't, the protocols they were doing with other people, it was not working with me. And the medications were making me sicker. And anything that I had asked as a suggestion, the reply I got back was, you didn't go to medical school. Just take the pill.
Oh gosh.
And come back when it gets worse, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think our listeners can completely relate to this. And I agree with you, being that I worked in the medical field for 28 years. I started in nursing and then I went into laboratory. And as a patient, it's so completely different from being in the field. I'm right there with you. They do this standard thing. If you fall outside the standard of care, they call it, then they throw this sort of generic term on you. And recently I had the same thing, and I hope it's changing, but right now they're saying fibromyalgia. Well, that's one of those, or IBS. Well, those are symptoms.
Right.
Those are not diagnosis.
Not the root cause. Right.
So I love that you're saying that, and you're right. Medical care is reactive. It's a process of elimination. And when they don't know, they'll just throw something that sounds good, and you're right. Medication is not always the answer. So My gosh, that's a long time. Plus, being that young for you, it's different when you're an adult and trying to get these answers, but trying to advocate at 5 to get
Yeah.
people to understand. How on board were your parents with what was going on with you?
They weren't. They didn't understand. I mean, they understand now, right? So 35 years later, they can understand it because I'm doing these interviews and they can see it from a different perspective. They can be removed from it. But throughout my childhood, they didn't know what to do with me. I was that difficult child because I was kept complaining and kept saying these things bother me. And they didn't know what to do, right? No one had heard of celiac. No one knew what a highly sensitive person was. No one understood autoimmune. I mean, even now, 35 years later, autoimmune is still not understood. There's no research funding for it. And because if you look healthy, there's nothing wrong with you. So these stories are still told. They're still
Wow.
told. And so that's the part that really bothers me, which is why I'm doing these interviews to let people know that they're not alone, that I understand exactly what it feels like because I lived it, but I didn't let it define me. So, as you said, like when you don't fit into the boxes, they will come up with archaic or general diagnoses. So, a lot of the specialists, because it was an ego thing for them, they had to figure it out. They would diagnose me with these really rare genetic conditions. And then they would send me to the geneticist. And again, thousands of tens of thousands of 100,000s worth of tests that were unnecessary, that are harmful, were done to me. And it was all inconclusive. And nobody talked to each other, right? So, like the rheumatologist did not talk to the GI doctor, who did not talk to the neurologist, who did not talk to the endocrinologist. So, there was no cooperation. There was no let's look at the body as a whole. It was let's just piecemeal it out and give a different medication from every doctor. And so when I would bring up, hey, can I change my diet? Should I stop using chemicals? Should I start, doing these different things? It was like, no, you can't do anything. This is beyond your control. This is what you are going to be dealing with, and just take the medication.
Oh,
And that was really frustrating to me because I knew it didn't work. I didn't want to take the medication. I could see it was making me sicker. I mean, at the worst of it, I'm 85 pounds. I'm 5'4". I'm 85 pounds. I have 2 broken feet. Still, they see nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, what else has to happen here for you to take this seriously? That I am essentially dying. My body is withering. I can't eat anything. I can't leave my house. I can't drive. My house is making me sick from mold, but they think that doesn't make sense. Oh, that's not real. I was told that's not real. That's not real. Okay. I live on an island. It's humid 10 months out of the year, but that's not real. And, I worked at a university, and most government buildings are moldy buildings. Dr. Shoemaker calls them sick buildings. So none of it was taken seriously. I was doing the research because I had been doing research, all of college, graduate school. So I knew how to do it. I knew how to read journals. And so I would get these functional doctors' books out and I would read them and I would ask the doctors. And because they weren't doing their research, to them it was crazy.
yeah.
And I would say, well, how do I do this protocol? Can you help me do this protocol? No, we can't do that. That's not real science. That's pseudoscience, right? That's not real science. And the irony I can laugh about now is because what they call real science has only been around 250 years with, John D. Rockefeller, where he got rid of all the homeopaths and all the chiropractors and all the naturopaths and all the herbalists for, what they claimed was real science. But all of those other sciences that they claim are pseudo have been around for thousands of years, and they work. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be around for thousands of years.
And this is a whole nother podcast, but let me add this, that the insurance just won't cover this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was my field for all of these years. And it was so frustrating because there wasn't hardly anything would cover screenings, proactive, let's do it before it becomes this thing. And you're right. The ego gets in the way and they're like, well, if I didn't think about it, you don't need to do it. And you're just
Right.
going to have to deal with it because I
Right.
know better. Don't be going to
Right.
Dr. Google. I know better.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wasn't going to Dr. Google. I was reading real books. I was reading real journal, from PubMed. And I'm saying, like, go on PubMed, pull up this article. I would bring printouts. Read this article. Could you read it before we have our consultation? No, I'm only given 10 minutes, but I have to pay out of pocket $300 to see you. Right. Because a lot of these doctors don't take insurance.
Yep.
So we have to pay out of pocket. But they'll cover, like you said, they'll cover the medication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they won't cover anything else. They won't cover the specialty blood work. They won't cover the specialty, hormone panel tests, the urine analysis panel tests. So, I was constantly fighting. So I was constantly fighting my body. I was fighting the doctors to believe me. I was fighting my family to believe me. I was fighting to be seen, to be heard. It was this constant fighting, and it was exhausting. I was already exhausted with severe fatigue from my conditions, and I still had no name. And you're desperate. You're desperate for someone to help you. So every time you see a new doctor, you think, oh, please let this be the one.
Yeah.
Right? You're desperate for a name. Please just tell me what I'm fighting. Please just tell me what it is. Maybe that will make a difference. And so I was on that merry-go-round for about almost 5 years. And it was bad. Like, it did not get better. I'm not going to lie and say it did, because it didn't. But what did happen was I started to listen to that inner voice when things got crazy, and my inner voice would get louder. So for instance, I saw a very renowned hematologist, and they thought I had this rare blood disorder. So I did all the tests. I came back inconclusive. And he said, well, this is my solution to you. Let's just do chemotherapy, and we'll kill your entire immune system and hope that it grows back.
Wow.
With a straight face.
Wow.
And my mom was with me because I couldn't drive myself. So she took me to all of my appointments. And I looked at my mother and I said, I'm not doing that. Like, I might be desperate, but I'm not that desperate. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die on my own terms. I'm not going to die because I'm taking chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And he said, well, cancer is like autoimmune. I'm like, it is. I don't have cancer. I don't have cancer. I'm not going to do that. So that was the point where I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I sat my family down and I said, I went the route you wanted me to do. I did all the things. I took the medications. I listened to the doctors, right? But even though they labeled me non-compliant because they couldn't figure it out and they didn't want to admit that, it was just, I wasn't doing it. But I was compliant, and I was getting sicker because of it. And I said, I'm not doing it this way anymore. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. That's that. Like, I'm not fighting this anymore. I literally cannot do it. I'm physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. And what we don't realize, and what we're not told, is that this creates medical trauma, right? Of not being seen, not being heard, not being believed. It's a whole nother level of trauma. But no one talks about that. I mean, they're talking about it now in the last few years. But when I was going through this 10 years ago, no one talked about that. No one talked about the effect of trauma on the body. Nobody talked about how not being seen, heard, or believed creates more trauma on the body, creates the propensity to have more blocked energy, which leads to disease and illness. No one talked about any of that. So I had to discover all of these connections on my own. The idea of plant medicine and using the plants to help me rebalance, because the body was designed to heal. We're not taught that, but the body was in fact designed to heal, but the body can only take so much. And we live in an extremely toxic world. And so when you keep putting more toxins on the body, it's like, uncle, I can't do this anymore. Something has to give. And the body begins to break down. But
I don't mean to interrupt you.
No.
Before we move forward on that thought, I love what you said is they are inserting trauma. This is technically psychological abuse. Okay.
Mhm.
This is, like you said, not being seen, heard, or believed. It's like anything else, sort of like being in a narcissistic abuse relationship with the medical community.
Yeah.
It's literally, and hypochondriac was thrown around my house quite often too.
Yeah.
And even as of lately, and I'm 52 now, and I was going through a big cardio workup, And literally they couldn't find anything. And my mother said, "Are you sure it's not all in your head?"
Right.
And you're right. So the triggers are, my husband will say, "You need to make an appointment." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine.
No,
I
exactly. I'm
don't
not
want to
doing
do
it.
that. I don't
Yep.
want to go there." And you're
Yep.
right. It's a cycle of,
Hmm.
you want me to go seek help. No one listens to me. No one helps me. It costs me a lot of money. The medication doesn't help me. And now I feel bad. And like you said, you wanted to die on your own terms. Unfortunately, you weren't able to live on your own terms.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
the point. It might not have killed you,
Right.
but you didn't get to live. And people who don't have chronic pain and autoimmune, or this, unsurety of what's going on in their body, have to get up every day and fight to just exist, just to
Hmm.
eat, just to walk, it's a terrible, terrible thing.
It is.
And I love that you said that about the psychology, because usually everything comes out physically based on what's going on mentally. And I tell this
Right.
to my coaching clients all the time.
Mhm.
We have to be whole emotionally,
Yeah.
spiritually, and physically. So
Exactly.
thank you
Yeah.
for
I
bringing
mean,
that up.
again, I didn't understand any of that connection, right? For years, because again, we're indoctrinated and the mind knows everything
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
body is broken. But the mind does not know everything. It's simply just part of the body. The
Yeah.
body has the intelligence. We just don't trust it. And we're
Mm.
taught not to listen to it. The wisdom is in the intuition. The body is always balancing every single day, trying to bring you back into a healthy, healing state. But we don't allow those processes to occur. We don't feel our feelings. We don't want to feel the sensations, right? I did everything and anything I could do to escape my body because it didn't feel safe. There was a lot of pain. There was childhood trauma that was suppressed that my body knew I did not have the skills to handle. No one taught me how to handle that. No, it's not learned in school. It's not something that are taught to parents, right? There's not parenting classes on how to deal with a sensitive child. But these traits that highly sensitive people have, we're the canaries in the coal mine. So we're the people, the first wave that are going to experience all these things because our body is so sensitive that the body is picking up on things before the blood work is going to show it.
Yeah.
And blood work is based on sick people. You don't go to the doctor when you feel well. Even if you go for a physical, you're probably going because there's something that's going on that's bothering you. And you're finally like, let me just go. You're not healthy people don't go for physicals. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like you only go to the doctor when there's something wrong. So blood work is skewed to unhealthy patterns. And a lot
Yeah.
of it is skewed to the male species, not the female. And it's not an accurate depiction of what's going on when you're not running full panels. And even if you are running full panels and you see a functional doctor like I do now, there are things that still don't come up on the blood work. And I'll say, no, I know this is going on. And we have to run urine tests and other panels for us to then get that full picture. So it's not a one and done, right? It's not this
Right.
singular formula.
You know
And so,
what? I don't mean to interrupt you. You know
no,
what
no,
really bothers me that the medical community does is the average for your age.
no. Mm-hmm.
That is so skewed right there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they come up with these normals and abnormals, right? For lab work, like you said, it's made for sick people. And then they also say, especially when I went in for cardio, they're like, "You're 52 years old. You shouldn't be having this thing. So you look great. You're fine." And I'm like, "But you
Right.
don't understand. I'm gonna have a heart attack any minute. I feel this thing." And they do this test, they do this calcium thing that they do, this CT. And they're like, they base it on other 52-year-olds. I don't want to be based on every other
Men.
52 year
And
old.
by other 52 men, it's not females, it's males. Yeah.
So I don't understand, how do we promote that change? And how did you advocate to finally get this change with your doctor and find a good doctor? I think our listeners need to know, how do
Yeah.
we find these doctors after 20 doctors that finally we know they're listening?
So this is the thing. The important point that I want to express is that you know your body better than anybody else.
Yeah.
So even if you did not go to medical school, that does not mean that you don't know your body.
Nice.
You've lived in your body your entire life. You know how it responds to certain things. You know how it responds to medications, to, stimulus, environments, all of that. You need to take your power back. That's what I had to do when my journey began to flip, to change, to deviate, was when I began to take my power back and say, nope, I'm not listening to you. You don't know better. You might have gone to medical school, and I respect that, but you need to respect that I know my body.
No.
And that's when the shift began to occur, when the people that I was seeing had to listen to me. They had to believe me.
Yes.
They had to honor what I was saying. Even if they felt like it maybe wasn't true, they had to still validate it. And if they didn't, I fired them, because guess what? The doctor works for you.
Yes.
You
Yes.
pay them. You pay them.
Nice.
Yeah. So we forget that, right? Like we put them in the white lab coat, we put them on this pedestal. They're still human. Yeah. It's called a practice. They don't have all of the information.
I'm just mind blown. It's called a practice. They're just practicing on every patient. Oh my, genius.
And I got to the point where I said, I'm not going to allow them to guinea pig me anymore. If I'm going to be guinea pigs, I'm going to guinea pig myself. And so that's when I decided to start exploring plant medicine. And I started, and the universe, source, God, spirit, whoever you talk to, reinforce that. So then all of this, this was when summits had just started, right? So like 10 years ago, no one had a podcast. There were summits. And so I was listening to the functional medicine doctors on the summit, and I would just go to the library, right? Because it was free. I would get all their books and I would read them. And I would try to figure things out on my own. And then I still kept doing that, but I started to open up to plant medicine. And then the universe sent me all these plant medicine summits, free herbalism trainings. Then read this book. This book just came out. It talks about this. Hey, Stephen Bunyar, he talks how you can make your own tinctures for certain conditions, right? How you can use the plants as antibiotics, antivirals, all these things, right? Novel concepts, been around for 5,000 years, if not longer. It goes back to indigenous medicine. That's a long time. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, again, that's a long time, a lot longer than Western medicine. Homeopathy, same thing. Homeopathy has been around since ancient Greeks. Like, that's a long time. Yeah. But the issue is there's no money, right? Because you can't charge an arm and a leg for it. So I started exploring all this, and I was fascinated that the plants that I was already growing in my backyard, and a lot of them were quote unquote weeds, had all of these effects that were beneficial to my body and the symptoms I was experiencing. So I got foraging books so I could properly identify my weeds. And I began eating my weeds. And you know what? I didn't get sick. I didn't die. I started to get better. Novel concept, right? Like, oh,
hey, there you go. Simple. Something natural without chemicals in it. Imagine
something that's free. It's already growing in my backyard. And this is what I tell people when I work with them. Like, these symptoms you're experiencing, I guaranteed if I came to your house and I walked through your backyard, the plants that you need to support your healing are already growing there. Wow. But you label them weeds and you spray them with Roundup, which causes more toxins to you and Mother Earth and issues for everybody. But those weeds are powerful plants. They are more powerful than anything I can grow from seed and cultivate myself. And so, my husband was like laughing at me, like I was building a lab in our kitchen and I was making my tinctures and I was making my infused oils, right? And I was creating these bombs to help all these symptoms. And lo and behold, they were working. And so then it was not, again, if you would have told me that when I was a medical researcher, I would have said you were crazy. There was no way I would do that. That's not real science. Yeah. Just eating your weeds, right? But it was that point of desperation where I thought something's got to shift. There's got to be a different way to do this. And if I'm going to go this route, I'm going to try it and see what happens, because I went the traditional route and it certainly did not work. So I'm going to start going this route and see how it happens. And at that point I had met my functional doctor, and she was the first doctor who looked at, you bring your briefcase of tests and lab work and charts, medical charts, right? You carry around this briefcase, this backpack of burdens that's trapped to you. And I said, she looked at everything and she said to me, I'm really sorry. And I thought, oh my God, she's not going to be able to help me either. And she went on and she said, I'm really sorry that no one has listened to you or believed you before. You are very sick. Yeah.
Oh, you must have just had a
I was just
5,000
crying.
pound weight
I was just
lifted.
crying. I couldn't
Oh,
talk. I was just crying because I had been waiting my whole life for someone to believe me, for someone to say, you're not crazy. It's not in your head. Like, I can see that there's something going on, right? I wasn't 85 pounds and had 2 broken feet in front of her, and she could still see that there was something wrong because
yes.
she was looking at the body as a whole. She was putting everything together, and she believed the mold issue. The challenge, again, so there's a challenge here that even when you find a functional medicine doctor, you may still not fit into the protocols that work for other people. And so this is what happened to me, is I still did not respond to the protocols that she used with other people who had these other, mold issues or tick disease issues. I was still not responding. And it was frustrating for her and I, because I thought I finally got somewhere that someone can help me. But it's important to understand that, again, not every doctor knows everything, right? So there are doctors, even functional doctors, who they just specialize in something, right? So either they specialize in tick disease, they specialize in mold, they specialize in multiple chemical sensitivity, they specialize in women's issues like hormones, they specialize in thyroid, right? Everyone kind of has their specialty. And so even though she had had experience with some of the things I was contending with, my situation was still very different than the people she had come across. So she was the first doctor who was not threatened by me saying, I'm going to go home and do my research. And then we can collaborate on an option. We can come together as a team to see, like, with your intelligence and my intelligence and the intelligence of my body, to see what may work better. And so that's what we continue to do to this day, is I say, I'm going to take the homeopathic remedy and I'll let you know how it goes. And, I'm going to try this protocol and I'll let you know how it goes. But ultimately, I am the one who decides my care. She supervises my care, but I decide what's going to happen and what doesn't. That's a novel concept to most people, that I'm in charge, not my doctor. But that's what works for me. And, I respect what she has to say. I respect that she went to medical school. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do what's best for me.
Yes. And what's neat about that is, like everything in life, like you said, you get to a point where you're like, this hasn't been working. Something has to change. And whether that's mentally, physically, or psychologically, like doing something different is the key to life, to learning something new.
Exactly.
What I love, you call it a functional doctor or a homeopath. Is that about the same?
No, functional doctor, they look at the body as a whole. A homeopath is, they're going to treat based upon symptoms like Western medicine, but they're not going to use medication. So they're going to use homeopathic remedies, which are distilled from all natural existing, either environmental, like rocks or insects or animals or mammals. And it will be heavily diluted into certain potencies. And the brilliance of homeopathy and plant medicine is that the body recognizes that, because it's real. It's not artificially created. It's not filled with chemicals, and the body responds to it. Does it respond overnight? Not all the time, right? It takes a little bit longer, but there's no side effects to homeopathy. There's no drug interaction. It rebalances the body like plant medicine. It rebalances the body on the natural way, in a natural way that the body understands, without adding more stress to the body. So I use homeopathy for everything. So that's how I treat my animals. That's how I treat my family. That's how I treat my friends, my clients. I use homeopathy because for me, it looks like magic, because the body responds so well to it. And it can be used for anything, for the simplest thing to the most extreme thing. So I'm not against Western medicine if you're in an emergency situation, right? If my husband's in a car accident, they're going to take him to the hospital, but I'm going to go with some homeopathic remedies to alleviate the issues, right? With what they're going to give him. But I'm not against it. But for chronic illness and autoimmune, it is not the way to go. The way to go is, I believe, from my experience I've had, is the non-traditional route. You know, it is the alternative route, and the alternative route is not bad. It's just different.
Yeah. And like you said, sometimes
Different.
it takes a little bit longer.
Mhm.
Everybody, I think, we've been sort of programmed like, I want this instant gratification,
Right.
fix it and fix it now. What I recognize is there were a lot of symptoms that I had when I was like literally at 38. I was in the absolute worst relationship I could ever be in. It was absolutely toxic and terrible. But my mindset was like, I don't have depression, I don't have anxiety, I'm good. But my body said, nope, we've got cancer now. I was walking with a cane from so much back pain. So a lot of it is subconscious. You don't even know, but you're not feeling well. And you're right, that tie, that connection. But I love what you say, that your body recognizes these natural remedies. And I'm a dog lover. Everybody knows that. I wrote 2 books about dogs. And my business is mydogiseverything.net, and it is a healthy alternative for dogs. So we make healthy treats with
Yep.
only 3 ingredients. And we make soap, and we like shampoos with nothing but essential oils and the good stuff for your dog. My older dog has he's 11 and he's got hip dysplasia, and I just started this the other day, giving him bone broth with mushrooms.
Yep.
He is improving
Yep.
within 2 or 3 days.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
isn't that fun when you
Yeah.
when you take something finally and you're like, oh my
Yep.
gosh,
Why didn't I try this sooner? Yeah.
yes, I
And with
literally, CBD to me is
right.
one of the biggest, for me, cure-alls. I cured endometriosis in my body with
Right.
CBD, and I told my OBGYN, she was dumbfounded because the only
Yeah.
way to do it is surgery.
Yeah.
And I said, please tell your patients, please tell
Yeah.
all your patients with endometriosis, do not get surgery, cause more scar tissue,
Exactly.
therefore
More
getting it
issues.
worse.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's another medical trauma, right? So it causes, so the body is stressed again. So the body is constantly being stressed. And so what you do for your dogs, I do for my dogs as well, right? So like my dog gets homeopathy, and that's, she has a stomach ache, she eats something she's not supposed to, she gets the homeopathy. And it's, the brilliance of it is you can see it work really well with animals and babies because they're not going to fight you.
Yeah. No
They're not going to
resistance.
fight you. They're just going to submit and do it. And so you can see how well it works. And like, that's why my husband was able to do it, because he was like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, really? Because the dog is fine. I never take the dog to the vet. She has no issues. She's 9.5. She's still puppy. I'm like, I don't know anyone else whose animal is like that. And so then he was like, I guess there is something to this homeopathy.
I know.
Right. So like, it's a good indication to get other people into it. Same thing with babies and small children. They don't, they don't have the know-how to understand to fight you on something. They're just going to submit to it.
They're receptive. They're
yes,
receptive, and they're
right.
open-minded about it. They're
not resistant
trained yet.
They don't have those belief systems yet. Exactly. That are infringing on them. Bruce Lipton talks about that. Age 7, these belief systems formed by age 7 that you have now, even as an adult, and they rule your life. And they're not even your beliefs.
Yeah.
They're the beliefs of the people around you who raised you. They're not even yours. And their beliefs aren't even their beliefs.
And
so
it's like stuck in there like a thorn for the next
crazy
40 years till you meet Amy or Maureen, and you start doing homeopathy.
You question your beliefs.
Yes.
Is this right? Is this belief still work for me? Right? Because a lot of these beliefs that we have, right? So I believed my body was broken. I believed that the doctor would fix me. I believed I had no power. I believed I had to live a certain way, otherwise I was being punished, right? I did something wrong, and that's why this happened to my body. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just did not listen to the innate intelligence that is existing in your body, right? Because we're not taught to do it. Yes. That's not your belief system. But it's never too late to change your belief system, to be open to something you can't see, to question and be curious about something that you've thought your whole life, but maybe it's no longer working for you.
That's right. It's like the wind. It's there. You just can't see it.
Exactly. And that's energy medicine. That's energy medicine. You can't see it, but it's there. And
I
it's always working.
I love that. What I want is, so I'm, no nurse or chemist. We don't know how to mix everything the way that you do. How about, can we get sort of these simple, I nothing simple, but can you help our listeners with some common
Yeah.
plant things that they can help with some common ailments?
Well, this is the thing. So everybody is different, right? So this is, the idea of Ayurveda. So I know you mentioned essential oils. So we're initially we're taught by these essential oil companies is, oh, if you have a headache, you take peppermint essential oil, right?
Right.
But you and we're different. Our bodies are created differently. We respond differently, right? So maybe I can't eat dairy and gluten, but you can, right?
Yeah.
So the body may not respond to peppermint because your body's already cool and wet. And that's the constitution of that plant. It's cool and it's wet. It's, it's moistening. But your body may respond to ginger. It's hot and it's dry. And so maybe that's what your body needs, right? So it's not, I don't want people to think that you just use this plant for this condition.
Okay.
If there really is a science to it. What I want to offer is that when you reconnect to Mother Nature and all of the gifts that she provides to you, you will ultimately rebalance your body. You will be open to changing and implementing new ideas, right? So when you get outside and you can see something bigger than you that you did not create, right? That was created by something else. Yeah. And you can appreciate the weeds rather than spraying them with Roundup. You could get a foraging book from the library. You can go on a foraging walk. You can take a foraging class. You can check out, someone's channel on YouTube who does foraging, right? So, and just see what's growing already that you can use. Maybe you start to eat it. Maybe you put it in your green juice, your smoothie, right? Maybe you make infused oils and tinctures with it, right? So you could do so many things with it. You could begin to eliminate the toxins you put in and on your body. That's huge. That's the first step I do with every single new person I meet. We need to evaluate exactly what you are putting in and on your body. Because if you are already living in a toxic world, and again, when I say toxic, it's negative. There's a lot of chemicals. There's a lot of pollution. The water is not clean, the air is not clean, what people call food is not real food, right? So when you examine these things and begin to make changes, you may be more receptive to understanding the messages from your body. When you get that pizza on Friday night, you may pay attention to your stomach and say, hey, I think I'm not supposed to eat that pizza, right? Or you put a new moisturizer on and you break out. There's something in that moisturizer that is not good for your body. So that was one of the first things that I did when I was on this journey, is I examined all of the toxic chemicals that were being used. So I began filtering my water. I got a Berkey water filter. I bought air purifiers for my home because I knew there was mold. We remediated mold. We do it every single year. I began making my own products to clean the house using essential oils, vinegar, rubbing alcohol, things like Castile soap, right?
Yeah.
I changed everything I used for cleaning, for personal care. I mean, I don't really use personal care products because even the clean ones, they still have ingredients in them that aren't great. Yes. So this was before a lot of these companies existed. The issue now is, so there's a lot of companies out there, but they're owned by these big corporations. Yes. So you have to constantly read the ingredients. So learning how to read labels. That's really important.
You are absolutely right. In fact, I had a podcast before yours where she talks about, all those personal products. She said, your laundry soap is the worst. She said, get rid of your Bath and Body Works.
Yep.
And even when
candles.
Yes, even when they put on like dye free or whatever, she's like, no, it still isn't, Maureen. And so
So
That's
it's SLS and phthalates in it. Yep.
it's almost like an elimination diet that
It
you do.
is.
You get rid of everything
Yep.
and then
And start
start.
new. Yep.
Yes. And you, like you said, not everybody is the same.
No.
I love, I don't know if you've done it, but the Well tests where they tell you what you're sensitive to, all the
No.
foods and stuff. I really like it. It's just you put a couple of drops of blood in and then they send you back the results. Ironically, and you'll surprise yourself. I thought maybe I'm gluten intolerant. My daughter is. I thought milk or whatever. Ironically, the one thing that I'm highly sensitive to is ginger.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I
That's
said. Because I
interesting.
have always had stomach problems and I've done
Right.
ginger tea and I've done
Right.
ginger ale. So
Right.
I mean, I'm going to promote them. Hopefully, Everlywell would love to come and sponsor my show. But,
Right.
I am a firm believer. They do hormone tests, they do
Yeah.
fertility tests, they do all
Right.
kinds of. So, outside of going to regular labs through your doctor, I
Right.
think being able to have access to these online screening labs, I think it's a genius idea. And you find out a lot about yourself.
Yeah, I always suggest people go to the environmental working group because they can then see what their products they're currently using are rated, and then they can scroll for healthier, cleaner products on the same site.
What
So
is
that's
that? Environmental
working group. So ewg.org, and they have the Skin Deep is the part of the database. So they have a whole database and they have like pretty much every product out there. You type in, Tide Pods, see what it's rated, right?
Yes.
And then you look for a laundry detergent that is either EWG certified or a 0.
Yes.
Because
she
5 is
mentioned
the
the same
worst.
thing. I
Yes.
remember now. I'm like,
Yes.
because I wrote it down and I was like, oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
genius. I love that.
That's what I refer people to because it was really helpful for me. And again, you don't realize how many different toxins, like the average woman is exposed to 150 toxins before she leaves the house. That's just what she puts on and in her body before 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. Right? That's insane. And that's just before 9 a.m.
Wow.
Think of throughout the day, you're reapplying moisturizer, you're reapplying lipstick, you're reapplying whatever, right?
Yes.
And then that's not just the toxins you're eating, you're ingesting. That's not the visual toxic imagery, right? Of social media, violence, the news, all of that. Like, so that's the first, that's square one of when I meet with people. It's really broad. So we go through it in a way that's manageable, right? Some people may have already taken some things out. They may know, hey, I can't eat gluten, I can't eat dairy. Hey, this chemical bothers me, right? I do have mold. So it's a really great way to start fresh, but it can be expensive, right? So that's why I made my own products. So I'll tell people, hey, you can just clean with this and it works. And you don't need the Clorox wipes. You don't need those.
Yes.
You don't need the Lysol spray. Get rid of the plugins, get rid of the scented candles. All of that is polluting your air and you're breathing it in. It's polluting the body. Wow. It's causing another level of stress. So just when I eliminated toxins, I felt like I didn't feel dramatically better, but I felt like, oh, I feel a little bit better now.
Just a little bit at a time.
It got
right?
Better and better. Small steps. It's celebrating the small wins. Yes. So you don't want to overwhelm yourself, especially if you're highly sensitive. We are hyper aroused 24/7. Yeah. Because in indigenous times, we were the people who kept the tribe safe. So we knew when that bison or mountain lion was coming. We knew when the floods were coming. We knew when we were going to experience drought. We knew when someone came to the village, they were not safe to be around. Wow. Right? Yeah. We understood the plants. We understood what plants were good to eat and what plants were not safe to eat.
We're sentient. We feel. We feel it before we see it. So yep. I just, I'm in awe of this conversation and I cannot believe our hour is almost up here, but where can people find you? Like, do you do this? You work one-on-one with everybody. So where can they find you? Because I think this is going to be huge. This is going to be amazing for them to find you because good information. I mean, I have chills. I'm already like, I'm like, I'm getting the message. I gotcha. I gotcha. I don't want to get rid of my candles, but I know I should. So where
I mean,
can
you
we
can find
find?
solutions that are better, but yeah, most of them are really bad. So they can go to mind, body, spirit, breath, and they could learn about the process of what it entails. They can also check out my Facebook page. It's called Amy, the Amateur Herbalist. There's a lot of free information on there. I post recipes. And then on YouTube is where the foraging and gardening videos are. It's also Amy, the Amateur Herbalist. And it's all free information for people to just check out, to learn, because I'm all about educating and empowerment so that other people don't have to experience it the same way we did, right? To change the tides, to just allow people to see a different way.
And the strong ones go through the experiences to help others. I'll say it a million times over, which is why I say I never knew. So as we end, I always ask these same questions. You probably heard in other ones. So what is the one thing you never knew, in short, that you can say now?
That the body is designed to heal.
Body is designed to heal. So if you're marching downtown with 100,000 people behind you and you have a banner, what does your banner say?
You get to choose what's best for you. You get to choose.
The body is designed to heal. Guys, I'll put all of these links for you guys to find, as well as the ewg.org, because I think that's a really great resource. The foraging I'm excited about because I'm a forager. Anyway, I love nature.
Great, right?
I'm a rock hounder. So, I love that, the foraging. So designed to heal, and you get to choose. And I just love that. And then, of course, the last thing I always say is, what is your shameless self-indulgence that you do for Amy?
I read fiction books and I just escape through them. Yeah, like, those silly Hallmark fiction books. I read those.
I love it. So do you like the Hallmark Channel then too, right?
I do like the Hallmark Channel. I do. I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm a feel-good story. I like it. It's important to remember that there's always a positive, right? So even though you and I had these experiences that were not great, the lessons that I learned from them made me the person I am, and the experience that I garnered from it allows me to help other people.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to go the same way, they don't have to struggle as long as I did.
Yes. Yeah. I always say the strongest go through it. And that's what I am able to now do is when things are happening, I'm going through, sort of a struggle right now in my family, trying to, get some guardianship of my grandson. And it angers me. And then I have to stop and go, wait a minute. You're doing this, Maureen. You know this from your whole life. Every experience you had was because you could bring it forward to your life coach and clients, now your podcast listeners, and when you do speaking to your audience. And so now I kind of like it. It's kind of like, it's weird that I have this flip, and you probably are the same way. It's like, okay, if I'm going through this thing, I'm like, oh, cool. So it's a new thing that I'm going to do later. It's
what's going to unfold from this, right? About staying curious. That's what I learned from my breathwork training is what's right about this I'm not getting.
Yes.
Right. To be curious, to flip it.
Yes.
And rather than stay in that negative cycle, right? Let's try to flip this. How can I see this differently? How can I question this in a way that's curious? Yeah. Staying curious rather than assigning judgment or blame or expectations or shoulds, right? Just staying curious to be, what could this look like? Yes. How could this be different?
And if you're staying in alignment with your purpose, that those experiences that you're getting are, I believe, you're asking for. I've had other guests that are like, I don't believe that, but I believe we may not ask for specific experiences, but I do believe we ask for these experiences.
Oh, yeah.
And I now just go, okay, fine, universe, what are we learning now?
Right.
I'm not always happy about these.
No, there's still an element of resistance because you're human. Right? Yeah. You're human, and you're going to keep having these experiences, these lessons until the day you leave the physical body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
Right. We just have to practice being
doing the work,
be in the flow. Just, in the downstream. Just
Yeah.
try to embrace the whatever's happening and just say, okay, I'm going to take this with as much ease as I can.
Yeah.
And that always helps to kind of get me off the ledge and say, okay, the more you fight it, the more you're going to bring more. Law of
Yep.
attraction,
Right.
energy. You're just
Right.
going to get more
What
of
you
that.
resist persists. Yep.
What you resist persists. Oh,
Yep.
I'm so using that. Well, Amy, you are amazing. And I don't think I said your
Thank
last
you.
name at the beginning. So this is
That's okay.
Amy Stein, guys. She is fabulous. She does not want to be in New York anymore, and I don't want to be in Arizona anymore. So we've
We're gonna
decided
switch.
we're gonna do, we could even do like a 6 month, 6 months. So we can mix it up because we think our bodies are tired of where we grew up.
Yeah.
So we need a little shift, I think. But
Yep.
Amy, you're just absolutely fabulous. And I am so
Thank you.
happy that I found you and that you came and gave me an hour of your life you'll never get back. That's a gift I always appreciate. And again, guys, go find her on her Facebook pages, Amy the Amateur Herbalist. And I'll put all that stuff in the promo and in the actual episode information. Geez, I can't spit it out. Information itself. So Miss Amy, thank you so much. You're amazing. And I cannot wait to keep in contact with you
Yes.
and to go on all of your wonderful resources. I'm signing up as soon as I get off here because
Thanks, Maureen.
great
Thanks
information.
so much.
Thank you for what you do in the world. Thank you for being the light worker that you are. And namaste to you today.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.